Hi guys. This is my second time doing this. Anyways, I miss you guys a lot. Hope you guys are doing well. Yeah, I have a little word to share really quickly, real fast, real short and sweet. But it's just something that God kind of like pricked my heart, and I read it, and he was just kind of like, you need to be doing that, and I was like, yeah, okay, you're right. Anyways, so Philippians 4. So you have 4 through 7 that says to be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer, supplication, and thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ. Then it goes on to say to meditate on things that are true. In verse 8, it says to meditate on things that are true, noble, just, pure, lovely, good report, praiseworthy, and that everything that you saw, or I'm going to try to paraphrase, but I can't really paraphrase this verse, but verse 9 says, the things which you learned and received and heard and saw in me, these do, and the God of peace will be with you. Then it says, in verse 10, but I rejoice in the Lord greatly, that now at last your care for me has flourished again, though you surely did care, but you lacked opportunity. Not that I speak in regard to need, nor for I have learned in whatsoever state I am in to be content. I know how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere in all things I have learned both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So, I've really been studying this verse. I've studied this verse for years, and there's still new things that I find out. First of all, another translation of verse 6 where it says be anxious for nothing, another translation says be careful for nothing. So when it says anxious, it doesn't mean like anxiety in the sense of you have a chemical imbalance in your brain and you deal with anxiety and you need to take medicine. It's talking about worldly care. It's talking about whenever you're in infirmities, which Paul wrote Philippians, and Paul went through hundreds and hundreds of trials and infirmities and so many things that would have caused him to worry. He was in prison many times. He was out in open sea, running away from bandits and Gentiles, and just came in contact with death multiple times, all this stuff. And Paul wrote this, saying to don't care about these worldly trials. And then goes after he says that, he says don't worry about these things, but instead pray and think about things that are good and blah blah blah. He then goes to say that he's learned the secret of life. I'm trying to find that one thing. Okay, anyways, so he goes to say that. Then he goes on to say that he's learned the secret of life, and that's contentment. So basically what I want to talk about is what the true meaning of contentment means. I can't speak. Contentment means peace. The true godly peace means that it doesn't matter what state your life is in, but you understand God's got it, and I'm not worried about it, even in my weaknesses. God's strength is shown through my weaknesses, so I'm not worried about it, and that's another thing that Paul says in 2 Corinthians. But he goes on to talk about contentment, and he talks about, I know how to be abased, and I know how to abound. And so, in other words, prosperity and adversary. So if I'm in life and I'm going through a really hard time, adversary, I'm going through struggles, I'm going through trials, of course, that can make my mind start to wonder, and I can start to worry, and I can start to doubt, and I can start to have fear, and all of these things. But something that honestly is basically kind of messes up with your mind, right? But the thing is that almost prosperity kind of does worse to someone's mind, because someone can become very prideful very easily. Someone can very easily not depend on the Lord, and start to see things of like, oh, I'm doing this. I'm being able to do all things because of me, and I'm so great, kind of thing. And so he takes those two circumstances and he says, I have learned to keep my mind in contact, like to keep my mind sane, to keep my mind humble, to keep my mind on a sturdy, stability. I'm able to be stable through all of these things. And that is something that since I was around 14, 15 years old, I noticed in certain people in my life and their character that they're just stable. And they've learned this verse of scripture to be content in all things. And I'm just like, wow, that's a characteristic I really want to have, because I know me, I can very easily get really stressed out about things. If something goes wrong, I'm like, oh no, and like just freak out and have anxiety and whatever and worry. But Paul here says that this is the secret to life, and we should live by that. So it's just a reminder to get over these things that, in verses prior to the content verse in Philippians 4, sorry if this is not making any sense. Philippians 4:6, it says to be anxious for nothing, but in everything through prayer and supplication. So the moment that I am worried, the moment I'm stressed, the moment I'm doubting, you get on your hands and knees and you pray and you let God know of your weaknesses and your worries. And in that moment, what you're doing is that you're surrendering those things to God, and you're now recrowning God of control of your life, and you're surrendering back to Him. And that is what being at peace